let's just move on further towards the last classification of numbers which we haven't discussed before, and that is nothing but the irrational numbers. But before starting the definition or the further discussion about the irrational numbers, first we will discuss about the story behind the origin of the irrational numbers. So the followers of the Pythagoras, or we can say the Pythagoreans of the Greece, who are called as the followers of the great mathematician and the philosopher Pythagoras, in approximately 400 BC found that there are other numbers except the rational numbers which are called as the numbers rational numbers that do exist on this particular number line apart from all these numbers. So they just found out that there are some other numbers that are lying on this particular number line. Those are called as the numbers which are irrational numbers, or those numbers which cannot be represented in the formation of P by Q. So such kind of numbers, they are nothing but called as the irrational numbers, and they found out that the very first number was root 2. So let's just discuss about the root 2 further with the definition of the irrational numbers. So let us suppose we are talking about the definition of the irrational number. So what is the meaning of an irrational number? A number S is called irrational. A number S is called irrational if it cannot be written in the form of P by Q. If we cannot able to write the number in the formation of P by Q, where P and Q are any integers and Q cannot be 0. So such kind of numbers which cannot be represented in the formation of P by Q, such kind of numbers are called as the irrational numbers. Let us suppose I'm talking about such kind of numbers. For example, for an instance, I'm talking about the number which is root 2, root 3, root 5, root 7, and so goes on. First of all, we can see that there is a symbol root, there is a square root, and the numbers that are in between the square root, they are nothing but the prime numbers. So these numbers which are of this form, which cannot be able to take out themselves from the root, they are nothing but called as the irrational numbers. Or we can say that by the definition is that those numbers which cannot be represented in the formation of P by Q, these numbers cannot be represented in the formation of P by Q. So such kind of numbers are nothing but called as the irrational number. And pi is also called as an irrational number. Pi is also called as an irrational number. So it is a special type of a number. So it is also called as an irrational number. So pi is an irrational number along with all these numbers which are of the form root 2, root 3, root 5, root 7. All of these numbers are irrational number. Let us suppose I'll talk about a number root 4. So this is not an irrational number because we can factorize 4 and we can take it out from the square root, as root 4 can be written as root 2 into 2. So this is nothing but 2 again, because root 2 into root 2 under the square root is nothing but 2. So this is not an irrational number. So such kind of numbers which are of the form root 2, root 3, root 5, root 7, such numbers are called as irrational numbers. So I hope the definition of the irrational number is all clear to you, that the numbers which cannot be represented in the formation of P by Q, such numbers are called as the irrational numbers. And the example of the irrational numbers are pi. First of all, very important example is nothing but pi. Pi is an irrational number. Root 2 is an irrational number. Root 3 is an irrational number. Root 5, root 7, and so goes on. And the most important thing over here is, as we know that in between any two rational numbers, there are infinitely many rational numbers. The same concept follows here in the irrational number. What is that? A special note is that in between any two numbers, in between any two numbers, Just like the same concept of the rational numbers, in between any two numbers, there are infinitely many irrational numbers. In between any two numbers, there exist infinitely many irrational numbers. So always remember, in between any two numbers, there are infinitely many irrational numbers. Just like the concept of the rational numbers, that in between any two rational numbers, there exist infinitely many rational numbers. So the same concept follow over here, that in between any two numbers, there are many or infinitely many irrational numbers. So this is the concept, or this is the introduction of the irrational numbers. So on this particular number line, in this particular number line, we can not only represent the numbers which are of the form -3, -2, -half, 0, half, 1, but we can also represent the numbers which are of the form √2, √3, √5, √7, and so goes on. Those are nothing but called as the irrational numbers. So this number line will not only include the rational numbers, but it also includes the numbers which are called as irrational. So whenever we will collect all these numbers that are existing in this particular number line, that is nothing but a combination of a particular rational number or an irrational number. When we collect all these numbers in this particular bag, so the collection of all these numbers in this particular bag is nothing but called as the numbers which are called as real numbers, which are nothing but represented by capital R. So what is the definition of the real numbers? What is the meaning of real numbers? Real number is nothing but a combination of the rationals as well as irrational. So real numbers are the biggest collection of the numbers, or the biggest set of numbers that not only include the natural numbers, but it includes the whole numbers, integers, rationals as well as irrationals. So it means that a real number is nothing but a collection which is far more way bigger than any particular collection of numbers. So I hope the definition of the real numbers is all clear to you, but let me just rewrite it again, that real numbers are not numbers which are nothing but called as, so let us suppose I am writing the definition of a real number. What is the meaning of a real number, which is nothing but represented as capital R? So real number is nothing but a collection which consists of both rationals as well as irrational numbers is called real numbers. We will discuss about real numbers in the class 10th chapter 1, but we are talking about the definition of the real numbers only, that a collection which consists of both rationals as well as irrational numbers, this is nothing but called as the real numbers, which are represented by capital of R. So the collection over here which involves not only the rationals but also the irrational numbers. So the collection in this particular bag is a collection of the real numbers which are nothing but represented as capital R. So capital R is the biggest collection of numbers that includes the two important collections, that is a collection of rationals as well as the collection of irrationals.